Let's talk a little bit about developing the speed of your scales and therefore other runs in pieces of music. When we are beginners and we start to learn scales, or we start to learn piano full stop, what we often tend to do is play with our fingers. So what we do is, if we take a very basic pentascale, for instance, like that, when we are first taught it, we take each finger very deliberately and very individually, like that. Which then starts to translate. I mean, obviously, the more advanced you get, the more that you sort of settle into a more relaxed feel. But it's still a technique that you carry through. And I've seen and heard of all standards of grades in their exam, for example. When they're doing their scales, they'll still be doing it at that kind of a speed, just because that's how they can do it, and they can't think of doing anything particularly quicker. But realistically, if you want to start developing the speed of your scales, and therefore other areas of your playing, what you need to do is consider that your fingers sort of are all loose together, and they're sort of all attached to the same palm, and they're sort of very, very, very flexible, really. So I want you to try this first of all. Just put them on a flat surface and just imagine that you're drumming your fingers. So, because that's literally the same principle. So what you do when you drum your fingers, you don't hit it out like that. You just sort of naturally splay them up like that, and that's exactly what we need to do. The only thing we need to do now is sort of add a little bit of force into that so that we can transfer that onto the keys. So let's take that pentascale. That was a C major one, obviously, but take it, put it on the C major pentascale, and just give it a go, just upwards. Don't worry about coming down just yet, and see how that feels. And it might just take a few times, because obviously you've got that new sort of pressure in it. It might just take a few times for you to get natural in terms of like evening it out a little bit. You'll find that as ever, there's always going to be weaker fingers in there. So there you go. So that's that. And then what you can do is try it on in different places on the piano, because obviously there's 12 different pentascales that you can do, and all of them are going to feel a little bit different. Obviously ones that are black note based are going to feel different still, but try and focus on the ones for now that start with the thumb and go thumb 2 3 4 5, or in the left hand 5 4 3 2 thumb, because that's going to be a really, really easy way for you to get into it. So basically most any of the white note keys are going to start the same way, or use the same fingering, but you're going to get that little bit of difference, as you would always expect with a scale anyway, because of the black notes in it. So that's what you do. You're just working up a nice sort of speed, and then you're going to work on going back down again, just in the same sort of thing. But you're not going to go up and down in one fluid motion. You're going to go up, down, because that will just help you sort of associate the movements separately before you start to join them together. If you started to go back down straight away, you might just find it a little bit difficult, a little bit more of a strain, but obviously that's the next step. So, and try it on all the places. And you need to be keeping a fairly relaxed wrist during all this as well, needless to say, because basically you don't want to be straining anything. You don't want to be straining your wrist. You don't want to be straining any of your fingers. You just want it to go naturally up and down. Now, that probably won't take you long to master something of that kind of a standard, but obviously we want to push it to the next kind of standard now, which is doing the full octave scale. And the reason that these are a little bit more complex is obviously because you have either the thumb going under, or you have fingers going over. So what you need to do is you need to focus on that pivotal moment. So take a scale, why not start with the obvious one again, C major, go up, just the first 3 notes like you would, thumb 2 3, and just focus on that, and then focus, once you feel confident with that, then focus on moving the thumb under and only taking it that far. Like that. Like that. And then take the second half of it and practice that. So obviously that's the thumb on F, and then the other 5 fingers would finish the scale, or the other 4 fingers would finish the scale. So practice that separately. And now take it a bit slower and sort of watch the movement of your hand and see exactly what it needs to do in order for the rest of your fingers to find their new position. So basically, in the case of C major and a lot of other scales, what needs to happen is when your thumb goes under, the rest of the fingers need to switch like that. So what you need to do is bring that now into the practice. So take the first 4 notes again and practice moving those fingers at the same time as your thumb goes under, but obviously at that new speed. See, I got it wrong there, but that's okay, we're still practicing, so keep going. And I mean, I'm doing it fairly sloppily, obviously, because I'm rushing through. You need to take more time with this, but when you feel a bit more comfortable with that, add that second half of the scale, i.e. the remaining 4 fingers, add that, and in theory you should get quite sloppy. We're getting that. So we're getting there. Yeah, you can hear that, you know, even just after, I don't know, what did I do, 10 or 20 there, but even after just a small amount like that, it went from being very iffy to very much more solid. Now, that's a way that you can practice doing the scales really quickly, but as ever, practice doing them slowly as well, but with focus on how your fingers feel now that you've tried doing it fast. How do you need your fingers to feel to do it fast? You need them to not be tense, you need your wrist not to be tense. And the problem is, when we go slow, we all have this very natural... If we put a metronome on now, for example, and try to do that scale at this kind of speed, like... We sort of naturally go back into a very... not necessarily a very, but into a much tenser place than we were. And we sort of put a little bit more focus because we're trying to hit those beats really evenly. But now that you've done that really fast now, imagine that you've got to keep that same level of relaxedness, that relaxation, in your fingers and in your wrist. And make sure that you're moving the fingers at the crucial moments. You've got no time to lose, so don't think that just because you're going slow now, that you can sort of take your time. You can't. You've got to move the fingers at the precise moment of the pivot, without giving it that extra emphasis, as you may have just heard that I just did there. You want to keep everything really even. So that's better. And then obviously, hot-cold treatment. Hot-cold treatment's fantastic. So, you know, once you've done that a few times slower, go back to trying it fast. There you go. And I mean, I say there you go. I mean that needs work, obviously, but we're getting towards the right area there. Now, the important thing about this is that unlike scales, when you play them like academically, like if you were going into an exam, playing scales rapidly feels extremely different scale to scale. So don't think that just because you're practicing C major that you can suddenly do any scale under the sun. You can't. You have to, any scale that you want to tackle, you have to take it individually. Even if it's the same fingers, you have to take it individually, because that one black note can make all the difference. You know, if I try to do a G major now, that it's not too bad, but that black note is making it so much more awkward, and I'm feeling a bit more strained now, whereas obviously I didn't have that in C major. So every single scale is unique, and you can get away with it when you're doing it slow a lot of the time, but you really need to focus. But that's really how you do it. You sort of split the scale up, and you take it in sort of very fast sections, and you consider the movement of drumming your fingers with just a little bit more force so that you obviously depress the key. And then you'll get really nice, beautiful scales. And practicing slow will also help you keep it rhythmically and dynamically even and in check as well.